Hi everybody, this is Boogass Reviews, and today I'm going to be doing a review on the McFarlane Toys Call of Duty Tactical Spawn figure. So before we take a look at Spawn, let's go ahead and take a look at all of the accessories that he comes with. So first up, you get his Spawn base, and he does actually benefit from using this depending on what pose you want to get him into, because he's actually pretty top heavy. Up next, you get his card with a nice shot of the model there from the game. And if you want to read it, go ahead and pause that now. Up next, he comes with his headset, and this looks really good, but it's very loose on his head. Anytime you try to move it, it just moves very freely, or it just drops off of his head. So yeah, it does look very cool on him, but it doesn't want to stay on his head at all. Up next, he comes with this missile launcher. This is reused from the munitions pack. It definitely needs a dry brushing of silver. On the previous Spawn I reviewed from Call of Duty, I added a silver wash to the black, and it really brought the details out very nicely. These things are detailed really nicely, but really brought down by the lack of paint. I mean, aside from the red there. Up next, he comes with this really long pistol. This reminds me of Joker's gun, because I actually think this is Joker's gun, the Rebirth Joker gun. I think they just recast it for the munitions pack and this Spawn figure. I'm probably going to give it to my animated Joker figure, because I just don't think that looks very good in Spawn's hand. Up next, he comes with this. I believe this is a submachine gun. And finally, he comes with this last gun. And just like with all the other weapons, it has some incredible sculpt detail, but really no paint detail aside from the red right there. It's also very odd that they didn't give him a pistol. They gave him an open holster to store a pistol, but none of the weapons actually fit down in it. If you have this gun from the munitions pack, then it fits perfectly down in here. And that looks really cool. So that's what I've been doing. I've been using this pistol in the holster, since you can actually put a weapon down in it. So now, let's go ahead and take a look at the head sculpt. So taking a look at this head sculpt, McFarlane Toys did a really awesome job on this. This is the exact same head that was used on the previous Call of Duty Spawn figure, but it still looks really cool. You get the scarf there with some really cool texturing to it. I believe it's actually cast in black and the red's painted over top of it. But it looks really good. It looks like there's some variation over top of it. That looks really cool. You get this new overlay piece over top of his torso for the pouches and ammo clips, and this actually looks really good. Surprisingly, it has a wash over top of the pouches that brings the details out very nicely. My issue with it is, though, I think it looks a little bit too large, and I feel like it's setting up too high. If you look at the picture of Spawn on this card, I feel like it's a little bit smaller, and these look like they're brown in this picture. So yeah, it does look pretty good, and it has more paint variation on it than I thought it would, but I wish it would have been just a tad bit smaller, especially if you want to get him holding any two-handed weapons from the previous munitions pack. The weapons will warp because you're trying to get him holding a weapon in both hands, and the weapon will curve around these pouches right here. I did try that, and I bent one of my weapons. So if you're thinking about doing that, don't. He does have knives sculpted on his suit here, but they aren't removable. I was very bummed that these are just sculpted in and not removable. He also has two back here on his backing as well, and they aren't removable either. I definitely wish there would have been some paint variation to all of these straps. You can see that this actually got some silver paint to it, but this part didn't. But yeah, you get a bunch of textures, but no sort of paint detail. That's really the big flaw with this figure, is it doesn't have any paint detail to it. I'm definitely going to dry brush. I can't decide what color I'm going to dry brush it. But yeah, I'm definitely going to add some dry brushing. That way the details come out and pop really nicely. I like the Spawn logo right there on his left shoulder pad. This strap right here isn't attached to anything. That way the articulation isn't hindered. And surprisingly, this does use more new parts than I thought it did. A lot of the pieces on this Spawn are brand new, because a lot of these straps and pouches have these indentations that are glued down into the thigh and the bicep right there. So yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised that we get more new parts on this than I thought we would. This actually uses a bunch of new parts, and I'm very happy about that. As I said though, it definitely needed some paint over top of these. Like the pouches, these parts should be silver. It would have really broken up that boring black color. Or even just print some scratches over top of the sculpted scratches right here. I think that would have looked really good. And the way that they made these boots is a little bit weird. I think it should have been an overlay piece, but they've got this weird cut to them, and they look very weird from the front. I'm not quite sure why McFarlane Toys made it like that. Actually, I would have preferred it just to be regular ankle swivels instead of these ball joints. I think that would have looked a lot better than this weird cut they have right there. I also forgot to mention he has some really, really cool texturing over top of his whole suit. I like that he has so much texturing in between all of the details on here. Like I said, all of the pouches and the straps are detailed really nicely, but there's no sort of paint variation to them, so they look very bland. So now, let's go ahead and go over his articulation. So he has a ball-jointed neck that really can't look back at all because of this scarf. He can look down very slightly. He can move his head side to side very nicely. His left shoulder moves out all the way. This right shoulder just drops constantly. It won't stay up at all. And I'm not sure why. It was like that straight out of the package. This one is just fine. But yeah, this one drops constantly, so that's pretty irritating. His shoulders can move all the way around. He has a swivel at the bicep, double jointed elbows that can just about bend in all the way, ball jointed wrists that can move up and down and spin all the way around. He has, I believe, a ball jointed diaphragm and waist that can move back just a little bit. He can't really move forward at all because of all this going on. And he can really only move side to side at the waist very slightly. He has hips that can just about do a complete split. He can kick forward that far. He can kick back that far. He has a very nice thigh swivel. Double jointed knees that can move back all the way. These are separate pieces, so they will move, but they don't hinder the articulation at all. And he has ball jointed ankles that can move down just a little bit, up just a little bit. Doesn't really want to spin all the way around. You can hear how tight that joint is. And then toes that can move up that far. So now, let's do some size comparisons. So before I do size comparisons, I did put this gun from the munitions pack in Spawn's hand, and he can hold it properly, and it doesn't bend when you put it up against the pouches. I actually think that looks really good. That's probably the weapon that I'm going to leave in his hands, because displaying him like that, he actually looks pretty cool. Here he is next to the regular Call of Duty Spawn. Here he is next to the Mortal Kombat Commando Spawn. And finally, here he is next to the Collar Tops Commando Spawn, one of my all-time favorite Spawn figures, honestly. So overall, I don't think this figure is necessarily bad, but it's definitely not as good as it could be. It definitely needs some paint detail to it because the paint is very lacking on this figure. I'm also disappointed by how loose mine's right arm is, and the way that the headset can't even fit on the figure. I'm definitely going to have to put some double stick tape on each of the ears, or maybe even just glue it down. So yeah, the figure does look really cool, but I definitely have my complaints about it. If I had to choose the first Call of Duty Spawn that I reviewed or this one, I would definitely choose that first one with the cape. It is definitely a lot cooler. I honestly don't see myself posing this figure around too much. I'll honestly probably just leave him in this vanilla pose because I don't feel like the articulation is that great either because of that big overlay piece. So that's my review. If you like this review, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.